the house by marriage. All right. The founder was her father-in-law, a man called Philippe Cliquot. And Philippe is going to found our house under the name Cliquot Nuiro in 1772. All right. That's because as a wedding gift, he got 4 hectares of vineyard. He originally was not a champagne producer. He was a textile merchant, and he'll decide to start producing champagne after he marries his wife, Françoise Muiron, in before 1770. All right, and he's going to found our house in 1772. After this, it's his son François who will take over the business. All right, and François, he will marry Barbe, all right, in 1798 when she was 20, all right, in what was very likely an arranged marriage in between the two families, all right. So this was something that was very common at the time, especially if both families had businesses in common, all right. So just marry the kids and smoosh everything together. Even if this was an arranged marriage, they get along quite well. They find a common point precisely in champagne, all right, and everything goes pretty well up until 1805. In 1805, unfortunately, François becomes sick with a fever, all right, and Barbe finds herself a widow at 27 years old with a 6-year-old daughter. So as you guys can see, this is not the most comfortable place to be in, especially in the 19th century, right, where women were not financially independent, and now she's faced with 2 choices. Choice number 1, go back to her father's house, try to remarry, right? Choice number 2, take over her husband's business. And for choice number 2 to be possible, at the time, there was a law that said if a woman became a widow, automatically she was independent. She could have her own bank account, she could manage her own estate, she was good. If she never remarried, the moment she remarried, everything would go to the new husband.
Wow.
So what do you think she did?
She stayed single.
Exactly, she remained a widow, she stayed single, right? And instead, she went to speak with her father-in-law. Her father-in-law, Philippe Cliquot, who was devastated over the loss of his son, right? And he wanted to sell the business to the first person that came about. Madame Cliquot, she said, well, you're not going to sell my husband's business to a stranger, right? Let me continue the business, let me continue producing champagne. So Madame Cliquot buys the champagne house in 1805, all right? She becomes the first businesswoman, and in 1810 she'll permanently change the name of the house to Veuve Cliquot Ponsardin. Veuve, which in French means widow, Cliquot, her husband's name, and Ponsardin, her own maiden name. This is how she signs her name after her husband's death, and very clearly she puts her name on her business. There we go.
Love it.
Yeah, fantastic. So far so good, right? Small hiccup. In 1805, when she bought the house, she had no idea how to make champagne. That's the problem. That's the problem. So from 1805 to 1809, she's learning how to make champagne. She's also managing a sequence of bad harvests that were happening in Champagne at the time. So during those 4 years, she actually did not produce a lot. It's only in 1810 that Madame Cliquot will actually manage to produce something. And she'll start precisely with a vintage. Do you know what a vintage is?
It's one of the best years, right?
Exactly. It's a champagne made from one single year of harvest, all right? And here in Champagne, we're only going to make vintage if it's an excellent year, okay? If the grapes are actually excellent. That's exactly what Madame Cliquot found in 1810, really good grapes, and she decides to make her first vintage. Now, vintages at the time, they were not common in Champagne. People preferred blending several years of harvest, all right, to make sure that the champagne tasted the same, right? That there was this constance to the champagne, right, in terms of quality, in terms of taste. Madame Cliquot, she takes a risk. In 1810, she makes her first vintage. She'll also make a very detailed record naming all of the plots that she used to produce this vintage. as you guys can see, première cuvée, at the time this meant vintage, 1810, and all of the plots.
Wow.
Because of this record, it becomes the first vintage to be recognized here in Champagne. There we go. And as you can see, Madame Cliquot, she starts off bumpy, but on the right foot. There we go. Now, Madame Cliquot will also bring a number of innovations to Champagne, right? Innovations that are still essential nowadays to the way that we make Champagne, all right? And today we'll be testing all of them. We'll be testing 4 different vintages, all right? Riedling, one of Madame Cliquot's most important inventions, is essential to make Champagne, all right? And I'll show you how it goes once we're down in the cellars, all right? But we're also going to taste a rosé. Now, do you guys prefer a glass of white or a glass of rosé?
Rosé.
Both?
Okay.
Yeah?
Rosé.
Rosé?
Oh, white.
All right. Now, rosé for some, white for others, and maybe both, one after the other.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this is because nowadays, rosé and white, they actually taste very differently, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we can say this, no problem, right? Back then, in 1818, rosé and white tasted exactly the same. This is because most of the champagne producers at the time, to make a rosé champagne, they would add an elderberry extract into the wine, okay? And this would make the wine turn pink. However, it would add no aroma, no taste in any way whatsoever. So you had champagnes with 2 different colors that tasted exactly the same, like a t-shirt. You guys can see how Madame Cliquot did not like this idea, right? And she's going to find a method of making a rosé taste and look different. For that, she takes some inspiration from the red wines in Burgundy, more specifically the Pinot Noir from Burgundy, right? Which is very light, very fruity. So Madame Cliquot brings the method from Burgundy into Champagne. And she goes to the village of Bouzy here in Champagne, where we have excellent quality of Pinot Noir. She takes this Pinot Noir, she's going to make it into a full red wine using the method from Burgundy, right? And then she'll mix a little bit of the red into the white. Et voilà, we have a rosé. Yeah.
Was this the first champagne house to do this method?
Yes. Yes.
Very nice.
This was, Madame Cliquot was the first one to do this blending method, all right? And at the time, blending red and white was not well seen, okay? Even outside of Champagne, right? If you go to Bordeaux, and you tell them that you make your rosé by blending red and white, they'll kick you out, okay? It's no, okay? This only happens here in Champagne, all right? And because when Madame Cliquot, she put her blended rosé into the market, she zipped it real tight. She told no one how she was making her rosé champagne, and she let people taste the difference for themselves. Now, of course, people saw that the champagne had a different color, a much more beautiful copper pink, right?
Yes.
The champagne also had different aromas, right? And this one was the first, right? And so everyone was asking Madame Cliquot how she did this, right? Eventually she told them that she blended red and white. In the beginning, people were not very happy with this answer at all right? Nowadays, however, this blending method represents 95% of all the rosé produced in the region of Champagne. And it's a method that is exclusive to Champagne. You cannot use it anywhere else. There we go. So you can put your jacket over there on the table.